I'm Susie Roberti, and let's talk tail waggers. I have a wonderful guest today, someone that I've wished for so long to come and that we could speak to and learn so much about. But before we get started, I want to say thank you to my camera person. Thank you, Dave. BPTV is all volunteers, and you are more than welcome to come up, learn how to use cameras, do some editing, go out in the field, if you'd like to do a little show. It's just a wonderful, wonderful corner of the world. You're always welcome. So, guess who we have today? Susie Smith's here today.
Again.
Again.
I'm always here.
And she brought us our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful guest.
Well, yes, I did. My veterinarian from, I would say, the early 90s, 1990s, Dr. Paul Volz.
Hello, Doctor.
How are you?
We're doing good. I'm
Good.
just so excited. My heart is going so fast.
You've been trying to get a veterinarian on for a while.
Forever and
Yep.
ever and ever. And it just always seems like they don't have any time. How long have you been doing such a beautiful job?
26 years.
Wow. And what made you decide? I've always wanted to ask to be...
Mine was kind of more, I knew I wanted to do something with medicine, but I wasn't quite sure I wanted to do people. And at the time I was taking care of all the neighborhood animals when people went on vacation, and one day it just kind of hit me. It's like, well, you know, animals, medicine, there's actually doctors that do that. So
Yeah, and you must have just had the knack, and they liked you.
yeah,
Yeah,
more or less.
that's a lot. That truly means a lot.
Big help,
Yes.
So it just kind of happened organically. You just kind of fell right into it.
more or less. And,
Yeah.
and at that point you kind of start getting experience with veterinarians to see if you actually like it.
Oh, yes, I would see. Would one let you come down? I used to go down to Dr. Bates when I was a young girl, and he let me follow him around. I guess I was more of a pain in the butt, but he was as old-time vet, you know, and he'd say, "Oh, come on down," and he'd get the boots on, and I'd get my boots on, and
There you go.
would go, and that's all I ever did was go, "Oh my!"
Just amazing.
Yeah, and he let me take a fly larva from a little kitten's back of its neck, you know, and it was like, oh, wow, yeah.
Is that a warble?
Yeah, warble.
Yeah,
I've seen one of those before.
But
Those are nasty.
I think that's where you really, truly find out if you want to
Right.
do it.
Well, that's where some people don't realize that our job is not all puppies and kittens and giving them vaccines. There's a lot of gross things we have to deal with.
Yeah, but if you look at it as a doctor, as a veterinarian, it's really not gross.
No.
They need that,
Right.
you know, to be relieved or to be helped, and I think it's great. I really do.
Well, what do you think? What do you think the public needs to know that they really don't know? What are some of the points that you would like to get across to the public, and just, you know, basic things?
Well, why don't we start off with just one of the real basic ones, which is, as silly as it sounds, just everybody get your animals spayed or neutered. I mean, I do a lot of work for Humane Society, and that is their number one focus is spaying and neutering everything you can get a hold of. But
And you volunteer your time at the Washington area?
I do work for them. I do surgery for them 1 day a week, and then we also see some of their real sick ones. They'll send to our clinic for workup.
Yeah. Well, what do you think is one of the more important, like the heartworm, to get them, medicine for that?
Well, there's, let's say if we just start with something like heartworm, that is something that's been, honestly, Pittsburgh's kind of unique in its heartworm problem. I'm from Illinois, and literally heartworm's been out there for as long as I've been alive. I mean, it's been out there 60, 70 years. And
You're 60, 70 years old?
No, it's just...
No, I'm just teasing.
I'm aging very well.
You are.
When I graduated, we were told everything from the Mississippi River to the Atlantic Ocean had heartworm. And then I moved to Pittsburgh, and one of the first days I was here, one of the doctors I was working with said, "So, you guys have heartworm in Illinois?" And I looked at her like, "You're yanking my chain, right? Because everybody has heartworm. Pittsburgh did not." And the first couple of years I was here, we tested dogs and didn't find any. Then one year we got 3, and the next year we got 18, and then from there it just kind of went. And
So it is picking up.
It's not going real fast, but every year it's a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And that's something that I go back to, if we go back 10, 15 years ago at the clinic I'm at now, we maybe treated a dog every other year. That would be pretty average. Well, it's slowly picked up to the point where 3 years ago we treated 3, next year we treated 4, last year we treated 6.
Wow.
Now this year's been kind of unique because we've only done 2 so far this year. Hopefully it stays that way.
What do they come from?
Heartworm is kind of it seems almost like it's science fiction, but what happens is you have the adult worm in the heart of the dog. And thank goodness it's only dogs that get this. Canines get this, let's put it that way. It's not a real big cat problem. It's very rare to have in a cat, and people do not get heartworm. But
people don't get it?
No.
Okay.
They have found it as a unique finding on some autopsies. It was never anything that hurt a human, but that's really rare, and that's something that makes it into journals.
Now, how did they get this?
The adult worms sitting here, they are producing thousands of these little microscopic offspring that are literally just in there floating around. They're in there for the ride. A mosquito will bite a dog that's infected and pick up a few of those offspring, and that mosquito bites another dog and passes on the offspring, and then 6 months later, after the dog's been bitten, it's got adult worms in here.
There you go.
And the whole point of heartworm is to make sure the dogs never get heartworm. And what happens with that is there are medications on the market that if a dog is bitten by a mosquito and they pick up a few of those little heartworm offspring, you give them a pill at the end of the month that cleans them out, and they're ready to go for the next month. Heartworm prevention works backwards. If they already have the little immature phases in them, you give them the pill and it kills them off and you're done. It does not protect them from any heartworm they might pick up in the next month. So heartworm prevention works backwards. The real downside of heartworm is that once a dog has it, it is treatable. It's just that the only thing that will kill off adult heartworm in that's already in the heart is an arsenic compound. And we really would prefer to never give a dog arsenic. And that's just, all the dogs we treated have done fine. I've never had a problem with it. I just don't like the idea of sticking arsenic in a dog. And unfortunately, the medication to treat the arsenic compound is actually becoming very difficult to get a hold of. It's kind of on limited access right now. But it's something we would rather them...
It's very serious,
yes,
right? It is a very serious thing that you must do. Just say, oh, well, we have to, or oh, well, I'm going out, and oh, I forgot. It's something that you must do. And
it's a simple, it's just a little blood test we pull, and we run the test right in the clinic, and you know in 10 minutes if it's positive or negative. And as long as they're negative, we start them on the pills once a month, and away you go.
Right, and they don't have to have any this. You can do this as prevention every month.
That is the whole point.
That is a very, very good thing.
Make sure they never get it.
Remember that. Yes.
I wanted to bring it back to the spaying and neutering for a second. When I was on the board of directors and was a volunteer groomer down at the shelter, the dogs, it seems to me, when I got Harley, they didn't have to be spayed before they left, spayed or neutered. When did that come in? Like, we had to promise to bring them back, or, you know.
That actually changed probably within the past 10 years.
About 10 years.
And what has happened is that it has been found that, one, anesthesia is safe enough, you can do it on younger animals. And the really big push was that when we were doing it the old way, bring them back at 6 months old and spay them, humane societies were getting less than 60% compliance. So when you're a humane society and 40% of your animals aren't being spayed or neutered, it's defeating the whole purpose.
I think that was so great that you changed that over to...
Well, it's just now they hope that nothing ever walks out of the building without it being spayed or neutered, because that way it's done.
So they don't have to be 6 months old anymore to be spayed or neutered?
Really, we kind of aim for, depending on the breed, if it's a real toy breed, we were going to wait till later because we want them to have a little more body mass to them. But want them bigger.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's 10 weeks, give or take, is kind of
True.
classic.
that's-
They do okay. I mean, they
great.
go through surgery fine, they recover fine, and they're off and running.
Yeah, I just got 2 little kittens,
Oh, that's
and they
fine.
were done at 2.
Well, they're so cute.
You know, at 10 weeks.
10 okay.
That
yeah.
was it.
Good.
And I think they're so ornery and full of fun and everything.
Right.
that I brought them home, and the anesthetic that lasted like till about 9 o'clock that night, and boing.
Well, people always think that, oh my, you know, they're going to be laid up and I'm going to have to take off work for a couple of days, and then they're just going to be all, you know, lethargic. And
No.
literally, I tell people, okay, if you're lucky when you get them home, they're going to be tired that day.
Yes,
If you're
you're
really
lucky.
lucky, they'll be tired the next day, and after that, you're on your own.
It's just-
Well, don't you think everybody should go to a shelter and just see what it's all about, and then maybe that would make people realize that they need
Right.
to spay and neuter their
Exactly, because the shelters are all pretty much full constantly, and it would be great if you could get out there and adopt an animal as opposed to just hoping somebody else takes care of it. A lot of people ask me what's the best breed to get. Like, I want to get a breed dog for myself or a dog for my children or whatever. I always say, get a mutt, go to a shelter, adopt a dog that needs a home. Each individual breed has its own health problems. You know, it's kind of inherent in the breed, and when you get a mixed breed, you get away from a lot of those inherent breed problems. Not that they don't have health problems; they certainly are going to have health problems, but it's just you're going to have a little bit of a better chance of them not having a major issue, and also you're saving a life.
Yes,
See?
that's the whole thing.
It is,
saving
yeah.
a life. And that was a good point about someone that doesn't have any intentions on getting one from the Humane Society, but to go there and visit.
Then you see
And
what's
then
going
you
on.
would see
Right.
the heartbreak. And then you would say, yes, let's try and get spaded. And you would go out and about the world and say, please,
You know,
get
the
them
one,
spaded.
there's one other thing that a lot of people don't realize. It's spaying and neutering is not just to prevent extra puppies in the world, although that's the big one. Spaying a female, if they are spayed before they ever have a heat, it eliminates breast cancer from them as an old dog.
I didn't know that.
After the first heat, but before the second heat, if you spay them then, they're 90% unlikely to have breast cancer. But after 2 heats, spaying doesn't really help you with that problem. It still does get rid of the whole
Yeah.
problem with
Wow.
puppies. There's also another issue that comes up in old female dogs, in that if they are still intact, their heat cycles become kind of variable. You may not notice that they're in heat. They may not actually go through a classic heat, but they are still going into heat. It makes it much easier for them to get an infection at that point. And we see a fair number of old dogs that come in, well, she was in heat about a month ago and she's really sick right now. And it's because her uterus is really infected, and the only thing we can do for them then is pretty much spay them. And there's a big difference spaying a perfectly healthy 6-month-old or a 1-year-old dog, or trying to spay a 12-year-old dog that's really sick. It's just much better for them to do it young and get it over with.
Yeah.
And
Now what
it-
about the boys?
yeah, the boys, it prevents, if they are neutered young, it pretty much eliminates prostate disease from their life when they're an old dog. And if they're an old dog and they end up with a prostate problem, the first thing we're going to do is neuter them. And again, that's because that pretty much eliminates most of the prostate disease. But there's a big difference neutering, again, a 12-year-old dog that may not be so healthy anymore, and a 6-month-old dog that's bouncing off the walls and we'll never know anything happened to him.
Strong and ready to go.
Right.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking, really and
Right.
truly.
But that's what's so good about this show. I don't know if you know that Susie's had this show for 16 years. She has
great.
been here for 16 years. But
I
after,
can't believe
I just, this blows my mind because I've done 7 shows, and I'm just, it's just amazing that you could go on for 16 years. But at the end of every show, she talks about the Washington Area Humane Society for
Oh,
the last
good.
16 years,
Oh,
and
that's
she
nice.
asks people to take sheets and towels, and
Right.
she
I
just.
used to get the newsletter, and then
I'm going to get that for you.
once a year I would go out into the park and sit and read the whole thing.
Right.
So people get interested, in what was going on.
Right.
Because it's a special place, and it really having doctors like you giving your time.
Right.
Really,
This is important because
Yes.
somebody out there is going to hear it and they're going to, tell somebody else to tune in, and then maybe we've prevented 10 litters of
Right.
animals.
Babies
Perfect.
being born.
Yeah. Could I ask you a question about dog food?
Okay.
Because people ask me
Absolutely.
all the time, like, is there a certain type of dog food? And I know you and I have talked about this before. Do I need to go out and spend $1,000 a bag to feel not guilty about,
Right.
not giving my dogs the best in the world?
Right.
Like, what do you think about dog food?
I'm probably going to make a few people upset with this one, but I'm not a real proponent of real fancy dog food. It truly, to me, is an individual problem in that certain dogs have certain GI problems or just certain issues that they don't tolerate certain proteins in their diet. I mean, most dogs could eat whatever dog food you get them. It doesn't matter. You can get the store brands. You can get the more inexpensive brands. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a dog food. But there are certain dogs that do not tolerate, let's say you've got a dog that doesn't tolerate beef in their diet. So you have to get a diet that's not beef. And you go to, classically, you used to go to chicken. And once you start changing the protein source, the price goes up. And when you start, if your dog doesn't deal with, beef and chicken, you've got to go to lamb or fish or whatever. And there are some really bizarre foods out there now, like salmon and duck and potato and sweet potato and all those things. And if your dog has a GI problem, great. But a perfectly healthy dog that has to have a certain diet, there's a lot of hype out there now about, my God, you can't feed your dog grain, or you can't feed your dog gluten, or you can't feed your dog this, that, or the other thing.
I know, they got you running
We've
around.
only been feeding dogs this, food for 50 years or so, and they've been doing okay. And that's where, and some of these dogs are eating store brand dog foods, and they're living to be 16. That is not a bad food for them, obviously.
So you're seeing dogs at your practice that eat cheaper foods,
Really
more
I mean,
expensive?
literally the cheapest dog food on the planet, and they're living to be 15 or 16. Now, a lot of dogs, if they ate that, they probably would have a soft stool or diarrhea constantly, that kind of thing. And again, if your dog has a problem with that diet, then switch. But to me, if they like the food and their coat looks good and their stools are normal, that's a good food for that dog.
Then that is true. You really and truly don't have to break the bank.
And that's something that there's a huge amount of hype out there now that I think is driven more by market forces and advertising than it is by any real science
Then
that's
helping
behind
the
it.
dogs
Right.
and the cats too, because they have some crazy stuff out for the cats too.
I have another question.
Go
I'm just
ahead,
loaded
girl.
with questions
Good.
today. I have a cold and a sinus problem right now. Are my dogs susceptible to that?
Actually, classically, no. A lot of the viruses that we carry are not really picked up by other species. And again, the same issue goes the other direction. When it comes to viral infections, there aren't too many that dogs carry that we can get. It's not completely impossible. I actually just read an article yesterday that was talking about there is some indication that there are some viral infections we could pass to our dogs. Not having this article I was reading was strictly on dogs, but honestly, I don't think it's enough of a problem for anybody to really worry about.
So I can still kiss them.
You're going to do it anyway.
I know. You know me. Those goofy hound dogs.
Yeah, you have to love them. What other interesting things would you like us to?
Well, why don't we go talk about cats for a little bit, and the
Good.
spay neutering thing is kind of the same for cats. It's really nothing too different there. But the really big problem with cats, more of an issue for outdoor cats because they are fighting, and there are two viruses that cats can pick up that are almost identical to the AIDS virus that people carry. It's a feline leukemia virus and feline AIDS virus. It's actually FELV is feline leukemia virus, and FIV is feline immunodeficiency virus, so essentially it's feline AIDS. Those viruses are pretty much, if you have an indoor cat, and normally they're tested when they're young, if they're tested negative in their life and they stay indoors their whole life, they're not going to get leukemia, because typically it's got to be from direct contact, typically a bite wound from another infected
I
cat.
didn't know that.
It's as difficult for a cat to get leukemia and AIDS as it is for us to get AIDS. It's not a casual contact. There is some concern that there could be some casual transfer from food bowls and stuff like that. I'm not sure the jury's really out on that one yet. There was some initial work done 20 years ago that showed if you have 2 cats in the house, or let's say you have a multiple cat house, let's put it that way, and you do have a cat that has leukemia, they did find that from face-to-face contact, essentially they think it's from, you know, mouth, oral going to nasal passages, they could probably pass leukemia that way, or even mouth to mouth, they might be able to transfer leukemia that way.
And if you have a kitty cat, one stays in, one goes out, then you really...
You pretty much, they are both treated as an outdoor cat. And if they are outdoors, they should be, all cats should be tested negative. If you have a leukemia positive cat or an AIDS positive cat, they cannot go outside. And that's for 2 reasons. One, well, actually the big one is you don't want them spreading it across the countryside, but 2, you're also exposing, if you have a leukemia or an AIDS cat and they get in a fight, they're going to be much more likely to get sick from that bite as opposed to dealing with it without a problem. So, but in an outdoor cat, if they're tested negative when young, you vaccinate them against leukemia, and then do that every year, and then away you go.
You do that every year.
There is some belief, and this has not changed the vaccination protocols yet, but there is some belief, and this is just some initial studies that have shown that a majority of cats, something like 95%, I don't remember the number exactly, but a majority of cats that are infected with leukemia are infected before they're 1.5 to 2 years old.
Wow.
And a majority of adult cats, it's like less than 5%, pick up leukemia at that age.
Is there an age that you stop getting rabies shots and whatever if the dog stays inside? You know, like if they get to be 14, 15, 16 years old?
Honestly, for me, I do rabies forever. And that's more just because of the legal nightmare you're going to be in.
Oh, granted.
If somebody, a friend, relative, worker comes in your house and they even think the dog pretended to bite them, if that dog is not current on rabies, you are not going to believe the nightmare you're going to go through.
I had a grooming shop for 30 years, and I had ladies that would bring the little dogs in and say, and I say, you know, it's just, I know, I've doing your dog for 14, 15 years, but it just happened to be, wouldn't that be crazy?
Right. Now, rabies is pretty much lifetime. The other vaccines, you know, distemper and stuff like that, if you have, to me, when it's obvious that age is catching up with them, depending on, no matter how old they are, because some animals will live to be 18 while they're trying real hard, and some will be getting pretty old when they're 11. When they start getting to the point where you know end-of-life issues are starting to come, I will pretty much stop distemper vaccines and leukemia and whatever. Just at that point, it seems like it's overkill and it's not helping them.
Yeah.
Didn't you get bit by a rabid cat?
I have not been bitten, but I've worked with 2 different rabid animals, and it was something that in our clinic we had a kitten that come in and had a bite wound on it. It was only like 4 weeks old at the time.
I think I remember that.
And within a month after we saw it, and we saw it a couple of times to fix, work on the wounds and all that, it started having neurological signs. It was tested for rabies and it had it. So 2 of the people I work with needed to go through the rabies shots.
Oh, you didn't have to?
No, I did not. All veterinarians are vaccinated for rabies.
Oh.
Unfortunately, one of the doctors I work with had not had her blood checked recently. We're supposed to be checked every couple of years. So she ended up going through the whole process anyway.
Well, our director, Dave Cable, had a bat recently come into his house.
Right.
And his wife and his new baby and himself had to go through those shots because,
I'm sorry.
That was bad.
Yeah.
Can I ask you one more question? I know we're running short on time, but you, when I met you at the emergency clinic back in, I would say, early 90s.
Right.
And I met you, and you had that Snoopy tie on, and that's when I knew you were my vet. Remember I told you, I said you had Snoopy tie?
I'm sorry, I don't have the Snoopy tie anymore.
Oh, you don't? Oh, I'll get you one. But you've seen tens of thousands of animals, I'm sure, over these years. You've seen lots of different dogs and
Right, yeah.
And don't you think mine are the cutest? That's
Don't put them on the spot or anything.
Of course they are.
thank you. See, I wanted
And they are the best behaved.
They are. They're so
Absolutely.
well behaved.
Yes. And what kind of dogs do you have?
I have essentially a 7-year-old Beagle Terrier mutt who is undoubtedly, he's so ugly, he's cute kind of dog.
Yeah.
You know, he's almost looks like Benji, only he's not that cute. But
Is he
he's
from the Humane Society?
He's from Humane, and he is the greatest dog I've ever owned. I've had, you know, several dogs through my life, and he is the most interactive of any dog I've had. And I just got 8 months ago, I just got a pit bull, which was a dog that the dog warden in Washington County trapped, and she had a medical issue that we had her at the clinic for a couple of days, and I made the mistake of bringing my wife in one night to see her. And unfortunately, when my wife saw her, she pretty much said that the Sarah McLachlan song started rolling through her head, you know, in the eyes of the angels, and it was history at that point.
That was it, yeah.
Dog was coming home.
But it's true.
Right.
Stuff like that happens to you when you're meant to get when you
Right.
find them, or you go to the Humane Society. You know, it just
Oh, you're meant to have certain animals.
there's just that they come to you, and there's no getting around it.
And she's just
That's
she's starting to
precious.
come out of her shell, and she's actually turning out to be a fairly good dog. A lot of people think, you know, a lot of my neighbors are like, oh my God, you got a pit bull. It's like, pit bulls have a bad rap because they're used for fighting. They actually are really nice house dogs, and if they're trained to fight, then that's going to be a tough problem to have. But there are a lot of municipalities that are getting rid of pit bulls that will not help dog fighting, because there are 9 other breeds that can be used for fighting.
And
Pit bulls are not the only one.
Well,
Okay,
guess what?
it's time.
It's
Oh,
time
sure.
to say goodbye, and I want to say thank you, Doctor, please, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
Oh, it makes me so happy that to have someone on, and people will listen to that, and everything that you said and explained to everyone was perfect. And I thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
And Susie,
Yes,
you will be back, I hope.
I'll be back.
I promise.
I'm always back. You know that.
She'll always come back. Like always, I want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you for your support. When you come and walk up behind me and say, hey, Tail Wagger, I really like your show, or Susie, could you have a show about pets, my older pet, and when he's going to pass away, and there, what should we do, kind of thing. I treasure every one of those. And when you tell me that you love me, and I get to say I love you back. So remember the Washington Area Humane Society, and they need sheets, they need towels, anything that you wouldn't be giving to the homeless. If it isn't good enough, then send it to the Washington Area Humane Society. They do need kitten food and cat food. And
Brown food.
They only like the brown food, and dog food. And they need volunteers desperately.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. So, like always, I love you, and thanks from all the tail waggers.